Mike here with Underground Explorers Overland, and today we're going to do a video on diesel heaters. Specifically, the diesel heaters from LF Brothers, a Chinese manufacturer. You know, we've had a diesel heater for a long time, just one of the generic ones. I think we got it off eBay. And while it worked, it wasn't the best quality piece of equipment. We had some trouble with the controller, we had trouble with the fuel leaking, which we'll talk about, and I noticed that LF Brothers started advertising their heaters and they looked different. So I reached out to them and started a conversation about the technical features, and they sent me some heaters to take a look at. So that's what we're going to do today. I've been running one of these heaters for a couple months to test, and I'll tell you how that went, and we'll talk about the differences between their models and a lot of the other stuff you see on the market. So before we get started, let's fire up one of the heaters. We'll fire up the N2 Pro. And so let's talk about some of the features real quick then. The N2 Pro and the N3 Pro have quick connects for the power supply and the controller. And the controller's on a remote. So these things are terrific for setting up quickly. Snap that on. I already have this hardwired into the Jeep. And we put it on and snap it on. Put the silencer on. We'll talk more about that later. Grab the controller, press and hold, and up it goes. We'll let that get started. We'll talk about the rest of the heaters. All right, so let's talk about the heater most people are probably interested in. That's the N2. So unlike your standard generic, this wobbly thing, it's made out of sheet metal with sheet metal screws that strip out and has these terrible gas tanks. The N2 and all the other heaters have this much better casing. Sorry, the sound of the N2 Pro shutting down. Much better casing. Everything has clip nuts, so it's basically bolts and nuts to hold it together so things aren't stripping out. The fuel tank and the fuel cap, it's like an automotive style. So the tank has a gasket, so if you leak fuel when you're filling it, it doesn't go inside the casing. And there's no seam on the gas tank threads like there are in these generic ones. So it doesn't split and the gas cap doesn't strip. And also this is a real automotive cap with a vent. Listen when I put this on. Hear that? So you can't over tighten it and it does not leak. You can invert the heater, no fuel will come out. So that's why I keep the heater inside now. The whole Jeep doesn't smell like diesel. And with my old heater setup that used one of these, the way the intake was, if I spilled diesel filling it, I get diesel fumes inside the tent. So this is so much better. The N2 comes with a standard muffler, doesn't really do anything. What all of them have it straight through, it makes a small difference. I like that they come with a plug, all of them, to protect the exhaust pipe, so you can keep that in there. And if you can see on the bottom, everything's all tidied up here. You're not adding and removing the exhaust pipe or the intake pipe. The silencer for the intake is inside. The exhaust pipe is fixed. There's good quality fuel line. They even have a coil of wire in there to prevent kinking. The difference between this and these generic ones is astounding. Now that the N2 Pro is fired up, let's talk about the Pro Series versus the standard N2. Both the same case. Both the same fuel tank and fuel cap. So you got those really important non-leaking feature, which is the most important thing in my mind. The difference with the Pro, besides the fancy connectors I showed earlier, is the electronics and the heater itself. So the heater is heavier, it's got more thermal mass, it's got upgraded electronics, and as part of that you have a different controller, and that's where the real big difference is that you're paying for. The controller has elevation compensation. It's got a barometric altimeter in here, and as you go up in elevation, you have less oxygen and less air getting to your heater. So you end up with a fuel-rich condition if you don't monitor that. And that will soot up the heater and it'll stop working. So this controller will reduce the amount of fuel, increase the fan speed, whatever's necessary to have the right combustion ratio, right air-fuel ratio, so the heater works properly, but it doesn't soot up. And then the other thing the controller has is a thermostat mode. And that's a really rare feature in these heaters. You click it over and you can set the temperature in centigrade, and the heater will cycle on and off to its full startup and shutdown cycle to maintain that temperature. Now, in something leaky like a rooftop tent, it's not the best solution because it cycles too much, but if you have something that holds the heat better, it will cycle less, and ultimately over a whole night it'll use less power and less fuel. The other thing about the Pro heaters is they come with these, not the hose, but these right angle fittings for both the intake and the exhaust. And what's nice, what I'm doing with this thing now is I just get out into the tent and set it up, click that on, run it up into the tent, no hose clamps, no playing around with it. When you're done breaking it down, click it off and pack it up. And if you wanted to recirculate the air, you could do the same thing with the intake if you wanted to conserve as much heat as possible. And then I mentioned before about the silencer or the muffler. Hopefully you can hear the difference here. Listen, there's the muffler on. Hear how much louder it is with it off? I don't know if you can see, this muffler has baffles in it. It's not straight through like the standard ones. Unfortunately, the one that comes with the N2 is that same style. Doesn't really do anything. I've talked to them to see if they'll sell these separately. But listen to the difference that makes. So now, we talked about that. I'm going to shut this down, which you just do by pressing and holding again. And we'll quiet things down by having that shut down. The other thing that's worth saying is that the fuel pump, you can hear it on low outside. You can't hear it inside. It's quiet. So if the tick, tick, tick kind of sound drives you crazy, these heaters are amazing because you don't hear that inside. The other heater here is the N3 Pro. So really the only difference between the N3 Pro and the N2 Pro is the case. The N3 Pro has a taller single handle, so not as compact, but easy to carry with one hand. Same heater inside with the same upgraded electronics, the same Kyocera glow plug, the same thermostat mode and elevation compensation, same fuel tank, same fuel cap, everything. The only difference is there's no terminals on the back of that, like on the N2. The N2 Pro has terminals to connect power. I don't know why you'd want to do that. This doesn't have it, so less to hit against something or short out. And it has the same quick connects on the front. And this is, honestly, it's cheaper. You get a few less accessories, but you know, in most cases, unless you really wanted to hang it a special way or you needed a very, very low to slide in somewhere, I'd get the N3 Pro because it's just as good for less money. So I'm really impressed with all three heaters. The elevation compensation on the Pro models is really important for our group because we regularly travel at elevation. We're in Colorado, we're in the Eastern Sierra, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 feet to camp. So having that adjustment is really important. If you're not traveling to real high elevations, the N2 is just fine. You get so many of these upgrades that these heaters offer for a fraction of the price of the Pros. So there you have the scoop on LF Brothers heaters. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the channel next time.